Alright, guys, welcome to Critical Thinking and Practical Reasoning. We are on Unit 2, Session 1, and our main aim here is to identify the types of arguments under the unit Varieties and Anatomy of Arguments. We are going to explain what a deductive argument is, look at the types of deductive argument, the basic logical forms under deductive argument, discuss what an inductive argument is and the types of inductive arguments. Note that under deductive argument, which is one branch of argument, there are two types of deductive argument. You have the valid and invalid argument. And the valid argument, you have the sound and unsound argument. Also, on the other side, we have inductive argument. An inductive argument could be either assessed as strong or weak inductive argument. Now let's look at the categories or the types of deductive argument. Deductive argument could be placed into general to general kind of argument, or general to particular, or they could be based on what inferences. Look at the markers that are highlighted there. These markers indicate whether it's general or to particular. So let's consider general to general. The argument reads, all cats are mammals. All mammals are warm-blooded animals. Therefore, all cats are warm-blooded animals. This argument is a general to general kind of argument because it moves from a general proposition which says all to the and the conclusion which it ends at also ends at all cats. So you understand that moving from an all to all makes it general to what? General. And it's a deductive argument because the conclusion is necessarily derived from the premises which is being established. Let's look at the second one, general to particular, and it reads, all teachers who are tall teach mathematics. Mr. Kumson is a teacher. Therefore, Mr. Kumson teaches mathematics. Now, this also moves from what? General to particular, from all teachers to Mr. Kumson. Right. Now, let's look at the third one, which is based on inference. If fuel prices go high, car prices will go high too. Fuel prices are high, therefore car prices are high. This conclusion is actually based on inference from the available established premises. One could infer, right, to draw a conclusion, and that is what's being done at the third inference. Now let's look at what we have here for basic logical forms. Now, understanding the basic logical forms, you know that deductive argument can be, there are some common types they are put into, which we use in our everyday use. We try to make deductive arguments of this nature, and we want to discuss them as basic logical forms. Now, one thing you should note, when you look down the slide, at the lower part of the slide, you find a start information that say the condition required is the antecedent presented with the variable p, and what satisfies the condition is the consequent, into bracket, represented with the variable q. Now, understand that in these four types of argument that we are going to discuss, we are going to use if conditional statements. Now, what are these if conditional statements? Now, if conditional statement is just stating that if this happens, then something will follow. So the first part of something happening is what we are calling antecedent, and that's what we identify as what? P. And that's what we identify as P. Now, the second part of something following after if one thing happens, like let's say if there's a condition, like if you satisfy this condition, then I'll do that. When the condition that you have to satisfy is what we are calling what? P, right? What I will do if you satisfy the condition is what? Q, right? That is stated as a consequence that comes after the consequence that comes after the antecedent. So we have P as an antecedent and we have Q as a consequence. Now see this. The first example which we are going to use, which is called modus ponens. Modus ponens has another name calling the affirming the antecedent. Why so? We will find out from the example. It has a particular structure it follows, and this is the structure. The structure says, if P, then Q. P, therefore Q. Now, if you put them in practical instances where you place the variables with simple sentences, then you will notice that if there is a plane crash, then people died. There is a plane crash. There is a plane crash. Therefore, people died. So we have here, if P, then Q. And it comes to state P, therefore Q. Now you should note that it's as simple as the fact that if P happens, then Q will follow. And the person comes to affirm what? P. Now after affirming P, then necessarily Q will follow, because you put P as a condition for Q to what? Follow. So now that you have affirmed that P has happened, then necessarily, consequently, Q would what? Follow. And that makes an example of what? A modus ponens. I know you can write one example for yourself. Try it. Let's look at the second one, which we call modus tollens. What happens with modus tollens? The other name for modus tollens is denying the consequent. And what do you mean by denying the consequent? It says if P, then Q, right? So P is the antecedent and Q is the consequent. If P, then Q. Now it comes to say not Q. At this point, it denies the consequent. Not Q, right? Therefore, not P. So you could understand that it is giving us a condition. It says that if P happens, then Q will follow. Q did not follow. Therefore, P did not happen. Because if P happened, then Q would have followed, right? But now it says that Q did not follow. Therefore, actually, P did not even happen in the first place. Let's look at an example with the structure we have. It says, if students are brilliant, they will pass. Students did not pass. Therefore, the students are not brilliant. And this is a deductive argument, and understand that it is valid, right? It is valid because the conclusions are necessarily derived from the premises, and they follow exactly what the premises have already stated. The fact that the conclusion is derived from the premises makes it a deductive argument. But note that the fact that it follows from the established premises and it doesn't alter any sense of what a formal structure, or it follows chronologically, that or cogently, not even chronologically. Since the fact that it follows cogently, then it makes it valid. Let's look at the next one. We have disjunctive syllogism. Now, what happens with disjunctive syllogism? It says either P or Q, not P, therefore Q. The other version says either P or Q, not Q, therefore P. So the example we have here, this is very simple. It goes like, either you get a job or you stay at home. You did not get a job, therefore you stay at home, right? So you can see this example we have is the first example, the first formula that is stated here. So you can go ahead and write the second one by yourself. Let's look at the fourth valid argument that is discussed under the basic logical forms. And we have hypothetical syllogism, which is other times called conditional syllogism. And it says, if P, then Q. If Q, then R. Therefore, if P, then R. If the kids are good, they will sleep early. If the kids sleep early, they will be fine. Therefore, if the kids are good, they will be fine. Now, this is also a deductive and valid argument, right? I know, and you can write some examples by yourself. Just follow the structure. Know what you identify as P and what you identify as what Q, and just follow the structure. By following the structure, you can write out several valid deductive argument examples for yourself, right? Now, what is an inductive argument? An inductive argument is unlike the deductive argument. Inductive arguments are predictive and are based on probability. The propositions do not provide enough evidence for surety. So, since the propositions which are basically the premises and the conclusion don't give us enough grounds to be sure, then we cannot conclude that, oh, this thing can happen based on fact. And that's what makes inductive arguments based on what probability. Let's look at one of the examples there. It says Kofi spends 28% of his time outside school in his parents' house. Right now, Kofi is not in school. Kofi is in his parents' house. Now, that is an inductive argument, and we may look at its assessment later whether it could be strong or weak. Let's look at a second example. Most Canadian university students drink alcohol. Caroline is a Canadian student, therefore Caroline drinks alcohol. This is also an inductive argument because the grounds available does not necessitate us accepting the conclusion that being established. A strong inductive argument is the type of argument where there is either statistically high likelihood or much low likeliness for the argument to be accepted. Now look at the first one. Rainfall has been more than 15 inches every year for the past 30 years. Therefore, rainfall next year will probably be more than 15 inches. And this is statistics, it follows statistics, right? And look at the second one. See, sexually inactive old men are highly prone to prostate cancer. Morgan Freeman is old and sexually inactive now. Therefore, he will be a prostate cancer patient soon. And that is what these are strong inductive arguments. Let's look at weak inductive arguments. These ones, the statistical likelihood or likenesses is actually low, right? So let's look at arguments from statistical likelihood. The German volleyball team has been struggling and being unfortunate to win any match in this tournament. Therefore, they will surely win a match before the tournament is over. Then we have the other one which says the log likeness. Since the president who won the last national elections was gay and queer dominance is tolerated, therefore our next president will be queer. There are other kind of inductive arguments one could also consider, and these ones are either from generalizations or based on analogy. You can sample these, look at these examples and examine them for yourselves. Thank you very much for paying attention to us in this unit. This unit has been thoroughly engaging students on the modification of arguments and other types and the various angles which simple arguments could be assessed as inductive or deductive arguments. Thank you for your time. Bye bye. We'll see each other. We'll see you next time.